Canada's elections are today, so I'm going to lay out all of the data. I'm going to be talking about some of the crazy things that have been happening in Canada over the last few months, how this affects Americans, and at the very end, I'm going to talk about my prediction for who I think is going to win. To start things off, guys, I want to show you a video that kind of sets the stage for what has been going on in Canada over the last few months. Donald Trump was asked who he thinks is going to win the election in Canada, and this was his response.
Canada has an election coming up. Do you have a prediction for that, and what do you think the results
with respect to Canada?
With the negotiation?
Oh, I don't want to predict other nations' elections. It's tough enough doing this one. Look, I love the Canadian people. I like Canada, but it's costing us $200 billion a year to support Canada. $200 billion. And I say, why are we doing that? You know what? We can make our own cars. We have more energy than they do. We have more energy than anybody in the world. We don't need their lumber, obviously. We have more lumber. We have a lot of lumber. We have a lot of everything that they sell us. But in particular cars, they took a large percentage of the car making, and I want to bring it back to this country. I really don't want cars from Canada.
Right now, for Donald Trump, pretty much everything comes back to tariffs. However, this actually explains a lot of what's caused the political shift in Canada over the last 3 months. Look at this chart. This is the current standings, and over the last 4 years, the polling for Canadian politics. It's a little confusing for us Americans because the blue is actually the Liberals, the Conservatives, and the red is the Liberals, which a lot of people pointed out that red makes a lot more sense since red is associated with communism. I agree, by the way. We should change that in America. But in any case, the blue, again, conservative, red, liberal. What you can see is it was pretty close for a while until about 2023. And then Poilievre and the Conservatives were going way ahead, massive. And what you see is, I kid you not, the day, down to the day, where they are the most popular is January 20th of this year, the day that Donald Trump was put in office. And what you can see is that Poilievre and the Conservative Party in Canada started to grow quite a bit with Donald Trump's return to the Oval Office. From there, you see it completely collapse. Completely collapse could be a bit of a stretch, but you see them lose 7% of popularity. And perhaps what's more accurate is looking at the Liberal Party. You see at that point a huge ascension, like massive. They go from 20% support to 42% today. And so as it stands today, you've got about a 3% lead for the Liberal Party at 42% to about 39% for the Conservative Party, which is scary. It's scary if you're conservative in Canada. I will talk about how I think it's scary if you're a conservative in America as well. There's a few things that have caused this, and the largest is tariffs, in my opinion. There's this perception in Canada right now, it seems, that Poilievre is going to be more friendly to Trump and the American tariffs. Obviously, it's not, and when I say tariffs, it's tariffs as well as what Trump and some of his allies have said about Canada being a 51st state. I did a video on it in the past. I think that was a mistake. I think it's not very, I just don't really see it as a positive interaction. It's funny, sure. Can we make a joke occasionally? Sure. If it's about Canada, can we make a joke? Absolutely. But should the president be making a joke like that? Probably not, right? Maybe once, okay? But he's brought it up repeatedly. And again, there's this perception that the Conservative Party is going to be more friendly towards that than the Liberal Party. And I think that that's a pretty brilliant marketing strategy from the Liberals in Canada, because if you look at what Poilievre has said, he straight up has said over and over again that he is Canada first and wants to fight Trump on this. So there's not any it's not grounded in truth that the Conservative Party would be more friendly to Trump on any of that. However, the Liberal Party has been a lot more effective there in telling that story. Regardless, Canadians have turned back towards the Liberal Party in order to combat Trump. That's what's happening. I think it's a horrible idea, by the way, because I think the Liberal Party in Canada is only slightly better than the CCP. They're awful. They're really awful, but that's the reality. The other thing that you'll notice on that graph, I'll pull it up one more time for you to see, is that what's happened at the same time as the liberal ascension, you'll notice that this party in orange completely collapsed. And that party is the New Democrat Party, which is essentially the far left or socialist party in Canada. And so you might look at that and think, well, that's good. And in a way it is, but I think what you're seeing, and this is something that we don't experience in the United States since we have mostly a two-party system and they have a parliamentary system, in that they may be forming a bit of a coalition between the New Democrat Party and the liberals. And what you see from voters is they think, well, even I'm talking about the New Democrats, they look at it and they think, well, the New Democrats probably aren't going to have that many seats. They're definitely not going to win the majority, or the plurality rather, and be able to choose the prime minister. And so they're deciding to vote with the Liberal Party instead because they want to control the prime minister. And that explains the number boost for liberals in large part, because again, if you look at the map, it's a bit of a collapse for conservatives, but not completely. It doesn't explain that massive ascension for liberals. If you add, however, the New Democrat Party numbers in, it starts to make a lot more sense. So that's what's happening there. And honestly, it's a smart political move. However, it sucks if you're a conservative. Here's my prediction, though. This is what I think is going to happen. My prediction is I think Poilievre is going to win. I think he's this is a bold take because most people are not saying that. A lot of people, the numbers right now are saying that the Liberals have a 70% chance of winning, which would put Mark Carney in. Mark Carney is basically the same as Justin Trudeau. Basically the same. He's an established, he's like a Nancy Pelosi. If you're Canadian, you know who Mark Carney is. If you're American, you don't. He's the Nancy Pelosi of Canada. He's establishment all the way, very liberal. He may not be part of the far left party, the New Democrat Party, but he might as well be, really. He's just playing the game in the Liberal Party instead. However, my bold prediction again is I think Poilievre is going to win. I think conservatives will barely win. And even though they win, they're not going to have as big of a majority as they could have had. And I think some of that could be due to Donald Trump's rhetoric. I'm a massive Trump fan if you watched my show before. But I think that was a miscalculation from Trump. I think that he could have worked with the Conservative Party in an easier way than the Liberal Party. But again, that's exactly the rationale that the Liberals used to ascend to power again. And the reason, though, that Poilievre is still going to pull it out is I think similar to the mandate Trump was given here in America, people in Canada want a conservative prime minister. They are sick of Justin Trudeau, who I think has had 3 terms at this point, or at least the Liberal Party I know has had 3 terms. I don't know if Justin Trudeau was in the entire time. But in any case, they're sick of it. And honestly, even though I'm an American, every country, in my opinion, should have their country first leader. So it doesn't bother me, even though he's said some things against Trump, it doesn't bother me that Pierre Poilievre is saying, I'm Canada first. I think everyone deserves that. And again, that's coming from an American. I think he's going to win. I think it's going to be very close. What you see from the polls right now is he's down by 3%. But as we know, Donald Trump was down about 5% in the last election, and he won the popular vote by 1.5%. So they were off by about 6.5%. Donald Trump is kind of a unique figure in polling. People aren't good at polling him, so I don't think Poilievre is going to have quite that big of a margin, but I think he's going to barely pull it off. We'll have to see. It's tonight. You'll have to let me know in the comments what you think as well. I think Poilievre will have a similar victory over the Liberal Party. Hopefully we'll see it. Back over here in America, though, guys, Joy Reid is being brought through the ringer right now for this unhinged rant that she went on about how immigrants would have somehow saved the Roman Empire and how they weren't diverse enough. She basically says, as many wrong things in a small clip as she possibly could say. So without further ado, here it is.
Each community on earth. If you take that away and try to distill us just down to white folks, we'll be like Europe, an aging, slowly dying former empire. The Roman Empire didn't survive because it didn't have enough strength in its diversity. It suppressed its diversity and it died. If the U.S. wants to be the Roman Empire, keep voting the way you're voting, y'all.
There are literally so many falsehoods in just such a short video, so I'm going to break them down one at a time. The first thing she says that if we go all white, that we're going to become struggling and aging and awful like Europe. And here's the thing with that. So Europe is aging and struggling, and I'm talking about Western Europe, like the EU, France, England, the UK, that's what I'm talking about. But they're not struggling because they're all white. If anyone's ever been to London or Paris or Amsterdam recently, you'll know that you're not going to see a majority whites there. It's going to be a lot of black people, a lot of Arabs, lots of immigrants. So it's a weird thing to say. And then, of course, she goes to the Roman Empire, which has the exact same problem. She's basically saying the exact opposite of what is true. She says that the Roman Empire was not diverse enough. However, Rome fell to Germanic barbaric raids because they were too diverse. They were spread out. They had way too much rampant immigration, which is exactly what the United States is going through right now. So the funniest part of all of this is what she's saying is the exact opposite of what is true. And what's really interesting, too, is that the premise of her argument, which I've seen a lot of people commenting on this video, but no one has actually talked about the premise of her argument. The premise is that we should be an empire. That's what she's saying. She's saying we should be like the old Roman Empire, the old British Empire. However, if that's true, then that would mean the exact opposite of what she says every day. Joy Reid literally every day calls white people colonizers and talks about how Columbus is evil, for example. And so now she's saying she wants us to be like Rome and the British Empire. So here's the real secret, guys. This is what Joy Reid wants. She wants us to be the fallen version of Rome. She wants us to be the fallen version of Great Britain, but like a classic leftist, she just turns around and just says a bold-faced lie, the opposite of what is true, because she knows what is true is actually what is popular. And so she has to say that, even though it's not actually what she believes. What she believes, of course, is that she wants rampant illegal immigration, and that diversity is somehow our strength, which is there's no actual justification for that. And she knows it. That's why she has to lie. So again, I would believe her, except she literally hates the US, talks about it repeatedly on her show, the show that got canceled, by the way. So basically that means the US should do the exact opposite of what Joy Reid says. Thank you so much for watching this video, guys. Please like the video and subscribe to my channel to support me, as well as check out another video right here.